Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where you can find all of your basic guides on Total War games. Today we are looking at each individual unit's role of the Skaven faction. The Skaven rely on vast numbers of cheap, expendable troops with low leadership to hold down their enemies while they bombard them with a variety of different weapon teams and artillery pieces. Timestamps can be found in the description if you would like to skip to a particular portion of the video. The assassins are fast, sneaky, and deadly to enemy lords and heroes. They should never be sent directly into combat with enemy units. Instead, they should prowl on the edges of the battlefield looking for vulnerable lords and heroes to pick off. Assassins can deal with most spellcaster lords and heroes on their own. It shouldn't be used to attack melee-focused lords and heroes as they have low melee defense. The Warlock Engineer is equipped with the lore of Ruin. His spells can buff your front lines, slow down dangerous flying units, deal massive AoE damage against enemy characters, or simply smite the enemy with Warp Lightning above. It is most useful when you're going for a heavy ranged build. His skills are geared towards improving artillery and missile units, giving them more speed, missile damage, and ammunition, as well as reducing their reload times with his active abilities. The Packmaster is a good hero for dealing with large units, given his bonus versus large. He also does serve as a support hero, buffing up clan molder monsters and summoning tons of wolf rats onto the battlefield. The Chieftain is a heavily combat-centered specialist. He has good armor-piercing damage and is heavily armored with bonus versus large. He should mainly be used for taking out the heavily armored monstrous units or coming after lords that are on mounts. The Eshin Sorcerer is just like any other spellcaster with access to enemy debuffing spells and high damaging spells. They should be placed behind the front line or back lines and keep them away from any heroes or infantry. The Plague Priest is a wizard-type hero, although he is a decent melee combatant, so he can be used to fight on the frontline engagements, but keep him away from enemy heroes and lords. He has a ton of damaging and debuffing spells, along with the ability to summon Clanrats and Plague Monks onto the battlefield. Gorich is a strong melee fighter. He provides a deadly damage dealer that can trade efficiently against most lords and heroes. He has abilities that help him grind up infantry, but he should be generally used for taking out high-value targets like lords, heroes, and other large armored monsters. Skavenslaves are dirt cheap and can be mass-produced without needing any type of recruitment buildings. They are among the weakest units of all, but their large numbers allow them to act as a tar pit to bog down enemies, while the more valuable units get into position. They are also quite fast and able to catch up to nearly every other infantry. A good strategy is to have them in an army consisting solely of Skaven slaves that initiate the battles, while an army of higher tier units follow behind. The enemy will be drowned in rats before they can fight back. Do not hesitate to fire on your Skaven slaves with weapon teams, artilleries, or spells. Skavenslave Spears theoretically are better than regular slaves due to their higher melee defense, potentially helping them last longer. Their lower melee attack doesn't matter as much as slaves generally won't be able to get as many kills anyways. They do have a small anti-large bonus that could result in them killing more light cav that get bogged down. These should be utilized in the same way as the regular Skaven slaves. While significantly more expensive than Skaven slaves and coming in at a slightly smaller unit size, Clanrats have the melee stats to actually do some damage against weaker enemies and last a bit longer. The shielded versions are always the preferred variant. Don't bother recruiting lots of them, and don't expect them to really do anything in combat besides keeping your enemies away from your precious artillery and weapons teams. Clanrats with Spears are your first anti-large unit with charged defense. The shielded versions are definitely worth the slight extra cost. They will be used in the same way as the Clanrats and Skaven slaves. You can leave some in your reserves near your backline just in case there are some cav charges you need to absorb. The shielded version of the regular Clanrats give them an added protection against missile fire. They are a credible melee unit which will last longer and deal more damage than a unit of slaves. These can be used to replace your Skaven slave armies, but just know that they will cost more to upkeep while also serving the same purpose. These Clanrats with Spears are the preferred version of the Clanrat Spears. They should be used in the same way as the regular Clanrat Spears. Warp Grinders are best used as a utility unit that can stop enemies from moving and deal damage to blobs of units. They are not strong fighters on their own and will not win many melee engagements. The Eshin Triad are a good infantry to leave on the flanks of your front lines. Since they have stock, they are a nasty surprise for any cav attempting to flank your front lines or your back line. Their armor piercing and anti-large bonuses, as well as their armor sundering, make them great for dealing with heavy cav. The Plague Monks suffer from two glaring weaknesses, a lack of shields and a practically non-existent armor value. The combination of both means they are extremely vulnerable to ranged attacks. That being said, their physical resistance will help them survive in combat, and their melee stats combined with Frenzy means they will dish out some solid damage. They have decent leadership for Skaven. If you are fighting a faction with more lightly armored infantry, then these are a good choice. They can also be used for flanking or keeping them in your reserves to bolster your front lines. Death Runners are the sneakiest Skaven infantry. They are able to move across the battlefield quickly and stealthily with stock and deployment of concealment bombs that allow them to get the drop on nearly any enemy. Their melee attacks have the armor of whatever enemy they're facing. They should never be used as a frontline unit, however, they can be extremely potent when supporting other Skaven units. They can be efficiently used for flanking, but will quickly be taken out by enemy missile fire. Stormvermin with halberds perform much better in combat than Clanrats, but are quite costly in comparison. In general, better value is gained from multiple units of Clanrats or Skavenslaves in a single Stormvermin unit. However, their armor-piercing damage can make them a good front line against Chaos, Dwarves, and especially Lizardmen, with their large number of heavily armored monsters. In the campaign, they are effective endgame infantries when costs become irrelevant, but Clanrats and Skavenslaves should form the bulk of your armies. If possible, keep only a few Stormvermin to guard your important units. Like their normal Plague Monk counterparts, the Censer Bearers suffer from poor armor and lack of shields. They are an even better shock trooper designed to break apart an enemy front line with their heavy armor piercing, contaminant contact effect, and magical attacks. These are a high value target and need to be kept safe from enemy missiles and magical damage. These should be mainly used for bolstering your frontline engagements. Like their halberd variant, the Stormvermin with shields are quite costly and not worth the price until the very late game. Keep them away from large enemies as they are no match for enemies aside from other infantry. Better than nothing is the most fitting description for Skavenslave Slingers. Their leadership, damage, and range are very low, and they have no armor. They will die or start routing the minute any enemy unit so much as looks at them funny. The only upside to using them is they are dirt cheap in terms of upkeep and can fill out army slots if nothing else is available. But don't expect them to do any significant damage to anything if they are armored or shielded. Night Runners are fast and difficult for the enemy to deal with. They can easily flank the enemy's front line or harass the back line. Their ability to fire while moving means anything attempting to chase them down will be useless. They are exceptionally effective at distracting the enemy and splitting their forces. It is also possible to use them as a melee unit as they have decent melee stats. However, they should always attack from behind if they are used in this way. These Slinger versions can be used to replace your Skavenslave Slingers, but don't have the ability to fire while moving, so they are less effective in distracting the enemy while also dealing damage to them. Poison Wind Globadiers are best used in collaboration with Skavenslaves or Clanrats to tie down the enemy. Globadiers are effective in countering monstrous infantry, cav, or other monsters. However, their range is short and small unit size make them very vulnerable to any direct attack, so they must be protected from missile fire and any flanking maneuvers. Unlike Warpfire Throwers, they do not need a clear line of sight to attack. Friendly fire is almost guaranteed if any of your units are engaged with their targets. Warpfire Throwers are the weapon teams best suited for killing hordes of lightly armored melee infantry. While their range and armor piercing are lacking, their base damage output is extremely high and a full volley will almost completely wipe out or probably rout any lightly armored infantry. These work best on the flanks if cav are not a threat, or you could use them in a checkerboard formation. Careful for friendly fire as they would do a decent amount of damage to your own units if they're in front. The Slinger variant of Gutter Runners sacrifice melee stats for longer projectile range. They should be kept in the back line in most situations as they can only fire at targets in front of them. Their fast speed does allow them to be used as skirmishers with proper micro as well. Gutter Runners can outrun any other infantry and do chip damage to enemies within their range while moving. You would use them in the same way as the Night Runners, looking for moments to surround isolated units in the backline with their stock, vanguard deployment, and ability to fire while moving. Gutter Runner Slingers with poison just have the added effect of poison to their melee attacks and missiles, making them great for debuffing their targets. Utilize them in the same way as the regular Gutter Runner Slingers. As said for the Gutter Runner Slingers, the Poison Gutter Runners should be utilized in the same way as their regular counterparts. Due to their suppressive fire ability reducing the speed of enemy units hit by their bullets, Rattling Gunners are perfect for supporting your front lines. By using elevated terrain or a checkerboard formation, let your Rattling Gunners target anything and decimate them. The Warplock Jezzails. These weapon teams have an extremely long range and very good accuracy along with high armor piercing damage. These can provide some of the highest damage output of all units in the game. That being said, their effectiveness is dependent on the targets you choose for them. Don't waste their ammunition on light infantry or other chaff units if possible. Instead, target heavy cav, elite infantry, or other monsters. Even lords and heroes aren't safe from them due to their extreme precision. Due to their small unit size, they are very vulnerable to counterfire once the enemies get into range. Make sure to protect them at all costs. The Bombardier's globes are a little trickier to use compared to the Globadiers. They have a much broader impact area and can cause a tremendous amount of friendly fire. This can be a worthwhile trade when tying down expensive enemy units with Skavenslaves or Clanrats, but beware if you are using them in collaboration with Storm Vermin or Death Runners. They should be used in the same way as the Poison Wind Globadiers. The Poison Wind Mortars are an effective bombardment unit that adds to the deadly weapons teams for the Skaven. Their accuracy is not the best as their fire arcs are fairly high, making them highly unreliable in hitting fast-moving units. They have great armor-piercing damage and can be effectively used against heavy infantry. Wolf Rats function in a similar way as many Hound units in Warhammer 2. They are mainly used for chasing down ranged infantry or artillery pieces, and can also be used to chase down units routing off the battlefield to ensure they don't rally. They have an added bonus of decent armor-piercing damage, making them decent at fighting armored units. The Wolf Rats with Poison sacrifice their armor-piercing damage for poison attacks and higher weapon strength. These will be used more for flanking the frontline engagements to debuff with poison wherever needed. Rat Ogres are the equivalent to Shock Cav, fast, fragile, and boasting a massive charge bonus. Do not send them to engage the enemy head-on as they would die surprisingly fast. Instead, send them after lightly armored infantry such as archers or have them flank the front lines. The Brood Horror brings significant speed as well as the durability of regeneration and poison, which makes it very hard to kill. Its weaknesses are its low armor and leadership, which enables it to be broken very easily. These should be used to support your frontline engagements and avoid the anti-large infantry. The Mutant Rat Ogres are much stronger versions compared to the regular Rat Ogres. They also have an added bonus versus infantry and are better in every aspect. They should be utilized in the same way as the regular Rat Ogres. The Hell Pit Abomination has a large health pool with regeneration, respectable offensive stats, and a bonus versus large, allowing it to win most monster duels. It also performs well against units that lack bonus versus large. The sheer health of the Hell Pit makes it useful as extra bulk in an army. Keep this fighting on your frontline engagements and make sure to support it with some Clanrats or Skavenslaves. The Plagueclaw Catapult is a solid piece of anti-infantry artillery. Armor and physical resistance offer no protection against its magical projectiles. Preferred targets are expensive elite infantry. Enemies hit are inflicted with a leadership reducing debuff, so concentrating fire of multiple Plagueclaws into one unit can cause them to rout very quickly. They do have a large hitbox, so counterfire from any artillery can easily take out the models. Make sure to take out enemy artillery quickly and protect your own at all costs. The Warp Lightning Cannon is the Skaven's answer to monstrous and mounted units, while still being effective against infantry. It does have a similar fire arc to handgunners, so it will need a clear line of fire to its target. Their accuracy and projectile speed are much higher, so they will be able to hit flying units or moving cav. If there are no large enemies on the battlefield, target enemy units with deep formations. Doomflayers are the Skaven's versions of chariots, easily capable of shredding lines of infantry. They also gain additional armor when in melee, granting them more survivability. Send these units to charge the enemies head-on or via the flanks. Their armor will protect them for a while, but they are not meant for sustained combat. The Doomwheel is a literal terror of a unit. It is a mobile terror-causing chariot that has high armor and hits decently hard. It also has missile attacks, which allows it to randomly blast units. The Doomwheel is a strong anchor piece for the Skaven army It should be used for wreaking havoc through the frontline engagements. So that about wraps it up for our Skaven unit roster guide. You can find my suggestions for early and late game army comps in the video description. Hope you found it useful for your Skaven campaigns. If you enjoy this content, make sure you drop a like. Also, hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on any guides I release in the future.